This video is going to be for people who know people who are struggling with addiction or are parents of people who have addiction issues. And I want to do this video. I want to do this video because I had all those problems. And do I still struggle with some addiction problems? Yeah, I still do. But I feel like everybody does. Everybody has an addiction. But I had a substance abuse problem for 6 years when I was doing it. And once in a while, I like to consume a little bit of, hemp, if you know what I mean. Can't say, that because of YouTube. But I feel like, especially coming from being an addict and having friends who have family who are still, have addiction issues, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. A lot of people believe, especially parents of addicts, think that they did something wrong, or they were too strict, or they were too loose, or they didn't parent right. And I'm here to tell you, it's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done differently that would have made these challenges any different, or made your child or friend not use substances. There's nothing you could have done. My parents did everything they should have done as parents. And I think my parents were the best parents that I could ask for when I had the problem and even now. But a lot of people, they feel like, it's their fault and they do everything they can to help them out. And I know it sucks, but it's up to the person. It's up to the person. I can't tell you how many rehabs I went to, how many outpatient therapies I went to, how many therapists I went to, how many psychiatrists I went to. And the only time I actually stopped and didn't have a problem with addiction issues as much was when I wanted to stop. It was my decision. I had to stop. And I didn't really want to talk about this much because it brings up a lot of, things I don't want to think about. Because I remember when I finally decided to stop, I was like, I don't want to be around the situation anymore. I don't want to be around people who have that problem. I don't want to be around anything like that. I honestly don't even want to talk about it. Like doing this video, I didn't even really want to talk about it because I don't want my channel to be about this. But I was thinking, I couldn't think of what to talk about tonight. But I know a lot of people need to hear this. I know a lot of people need to hear this because I have friends who have family who have addiction problems that are very close to me, and they're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And I honestly don't know how people deal with it. I don't. Even though I was the addict, I was the one living it, it's way different being the one observing the person who has a problem and being helpless and can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. And it's shitty. And I still don't even though I was an addict, really the best advice I give to people is, you still gotta love them, right? But it's not, my mom said it best. I don't blame the person, I blame the addiction. So even though that person might not be the person you remember, because it's not, it's the addiction. The addiction has overtaken that person and they're doing things that they normally wouldn't do. And it's not your fault. There's nothing you can do that could, stop them. It's ultimately up to the person, and it's, I know people don't want to hear that, and, it's just raw truth, though. And I'm not really versed well enough in this to talk about it, except that I was an addict, right? But it's when I wanted to stop is when I stopped. And there's nothing my parents could have done. Nothing. They did what they needed to do. They did what they felt like they could have done as best. And I even asked my parents, even to this day, I'm like, I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you did it. Because even though I was the addict, I wouldn't know how to deal with a child like that. I wouldn't know how to deal if I had any friends like that. I don't know how to deal with it. Because, I was a person who did it, but I don't know how to deal with it. I just say, you got to love them from afar. And what I would say to do, since this is a manifestation channel, and I like this, and I've done this before and it worked for me. I'm not saying it's gonna work. I mean, hopefully it'll work for you, because I don't want to keep people's hopes up, because, you know, this is a very strong thing, addiction, and it's serious, and, you know, not a lot of people make it out, and I'm lucky I made it out. And I'll tell you a little story about how I had a friend who had an addiction problem, and how, in my opinion, I pretty much, I don't know, I wouldn't say I did it, he did it. But what I did is, he had a substance problem, right? Me and him both were using. And then he went and moved out of the country. Long story short, he wasn't doing well. He was homeless. He didn't have a job. He was hooked on substances. He was depressed. He was not going through good times. And I went through hell and back with this person. And it was not fun. And there was a lot of things that happened. That's a whole other video. But long story short, I remember I was doing the whole letting go thing. Because here's the problem with, you know, with a lot of these things, especially with addiction, is the thing is, we see that person as an addict. And when you see that person as an addict, I feel like you create more of that. I'm not saying it's your fault at all. This is not your fault. But what I'm saying is, if you continue to see that person as an addict, in a way, you're actually influencing them. And that person, if you see a person as an addict, then your reality has to reflect that. And what I did is, I remember I was like, I'm just going to block him. And I'm not going to talk to him. But because it was a lot for me, I didn't know what to do. So this is the best thing I knew what to do. And I was going to practice it, because I was in a manifestation at the time really heavily. And I was like, I'm going to practice this. And it's not easy. And I was like, I ignored him for 6 months. And what I did is, I saw him the way I want to see him. I was like, I see him as having a job. I see him as happy. I see him as not having a drug problem anymore. I see him as having housing. And 6 months later, he found a way to contact me. And 6 months later, he's like, I got a job. I'm not using substances anymore. I got a girlfriend. I got a place to stay. And he was doing amazing. And that's what I did. I did that with another friend too, and the same thing happened. And a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, Jeremy, but, you know, that doesn't happen. You know, my case is different. And that might be true. But if you're feeling helpless right now, and you have no way, like, what to do with said person, and you don't know what to do, like, that's the best thing I can say to do. Love them from afar. Understand it's not them, it's the addiction. But the main thing I would do, and I would say, is, since we are the creators of our own reality, and everything is us pushed out, I would say to go within yourself and to see the person the way you want them to be. See them as clean, see them as sober, see them healthy, see them the way you want to see them. Because this is a serious thing, and it's really hard for people to come to terms with this stuff. And that's the best thing I can say to do, is you just got to let go, and see them the way you want to see them. Because the thing is, we're constantly seeing them the way they are now. How can you help them if you're only seeing them as an addict? And the other thing is, people saw me as that. I knew that. I knew everybody saw me this way. And then everybody didn't have trust in me. And I get that. I totally get that. Because, you know, as a non-addict now, and now seeing things that happen, like, I have zero tolerance for that stuff, honestly. Like, I'm not around any people that have those problems anymore. I don't want to deal with it. It's because I just don't want to deal with it. It was a time in my life I don't want to remember much, and I don't remember much because I suppressed a lot of it, which probably isn't the greatest thing, but, you know, it's just stuff. It's just part of my life I don't want to remember much. And I would say that I felt that when people couldn't trust me, they didn't want to be around me, and I felt that I knew that they saw me this way, and it never helped. It never helped. People seeing me this way, because I knew it. I felt it. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm saying is, it could help you kind of put, you know, a different perspective, a different spin on it. So instead of seeing the person the way they are, And this is in reality in life too. See it the way you want it to be. Feel it, but act as if it's already here now. See them right now as sober. See them right now as, they're like, damn, I hit my rock bottom. I need to get out of this. I can't do this anymore. See them as coming to that conclusion and getting sober and getting help and being healthier than they ever have been. I mean, this is a serious thing. A lot of people, don't make it out alive. And sometimes, sometimes I say that. People hate that. I'm like, some people make it out, some people don't. We've had a lot of friends the past couple of years that passed from, substances. And it's a shitty thing. But yeah, I would say, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. My parents did everything they could. And I even, again, I asked them, like, I don't know how you guys did it. Because I would have kicked my ass out a long time ago. I wouldn't have dealt with my ass. I would have just like, nope, bye, see you later. You're not part of this family. I'm not dealing with you anymore. Like, can you imagine 6 years? 6 years my parents had to deal with me. 6 years of not wanting to know I'm going to come home. 6 years of, when's he going to be in the hospital again? Or is he even going to come home tonight? Yeah, I don't want to remember that much stuff. It's too depressing for me. But, yeah, I just want to tell you guys, it's not your fault. Nothing you could have done. My parents are the best parents in the world. I love my parents. I had everything. My parents did well for me and my brother. My parents are still together. I had a great life. I had a great childhood. So it doesn't matter if you have a perfect childhood or everything's perfect. People have problems and people have substance abuse problems. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And we try to rationalize why do they do this? And so people try to think, well, is it my fault? I blame my parents. I blamed them. I blamed everything on them too. And a lot of addicts, people who have those problems, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to blame you. They're going to blame everybody except themselves because, who wants to admit that, I'm the reason I did that stuff. And that's what I do. I call it radical responsibility. I take full responsibility for everything I ever did. Like, so right now I'm like, I did it. My parents didn't do it. My parents tried to help me, and I blame them for everything, on everything. But that's the thing. It's like, you got counselors that are like, oh, let's go deep in your childhood. And I get that. A lot of people have fucked up childhood. But like, I think it's like 85% of families have messed up households that have issues. 85%. So it's like, I have friends who grew up in addiction households and they never touched a drug in their life. But yet the other brothers did. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you do. People have problems. And a lot of families have addiction issues. And it just is what it is. And you got to realize it's not your fault. And there's nothing you can do that, or you could have not done that could have prevented that. I had everything. And I still chose to, and I could rationalize, I could say, actual reasons, things that I had happen in my childhood that could have came up to that. But it's just an excuse to me anymore. It's all an excuse. And, the counselor's try to get to the bottom of it. And they try to find out, what's your problem? Why do you feel this way? And then they go to your childhood. And that's what they try to do. And I feel like, and in my opinion, I feel like it creates more problems than it solves sometimes. Because it's like, you have a problem. What was your childhood like? And they go back and they try to figure out what it was. But in reality, my issue, when I came to my conclusion and got sober and didn't have a problem as much anymore, is I was powerless. I didn't know that I had the power to change my life. I didn't know that I had the power to stop. I didn't know how to. I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the information. Yeah, the rehabs helped me out. Yeah, they got me out. Counselors helped me out. And they had me sober, but eventually that stuff fell apart and it didn't do anything for me. And I remember when I finally decided to get sober, I just remember it was, it was a guy in my rehab that told me about the law of attraction and how my thoughts create things. And I didn't hear any of this stuff before, born again Christian, believe in God, but like none of that helped me. None of that helped me when I was in addiction. It didn't help me. And then when I found out about this law of attraction stuff, I actually became closer to God when I found out about this, because I found out the real power I have, and I believe in a way that, you know, says in the Bible, how have I not tell you, ye are gods? Literally says that. Have I not tell you, ye are gods? And we are pretty much co-creating all the time. But I didn't realize that. Once I was told that, I was like, wait a minute, I have all this power. I have all this power. Then I started researching, and I realized that, like, the reason a lot of us have these problems is because we're living in the past. We're living in the past, and we're told things. We're told once an act, always an act. You know, and then you have all these people that are looking down on you, and then it's killing your self-esteem, and it's killing your self-image, and then you just feel like a piece of shit because you can't do anything about it. You have this drug problem, and you can't stop, and nothing you ever try to do worked. And now I'm finding out about this law of attraction stuff and realizing that I'm actually the creator of my own reality. My thoughts create reality. My thoughts have a frequency. My thoughts create reality. My thoughts have a frequency. And a lot of us, I feel like, have these problems because we're living in the past all the time. The past doesn't exist. The past exists in the present. The past only exists in the mind. You can actually change your past by putting a new reality in the past. So instead of thinking about the addiction problems you used to have, put something else in it. Put something else in it. Fill that time with something completely different that makes you happy. Fill that time with something different. Like, what fun times do you want to have in your past? It's like a trick, right? Like, these are all concepts, right? But these are concepts I use that help me get over my addiction issues. And one of the main things was this. It was like, once I learned about time and it's linear, and, you know, time, you know, doesn't technically exist, and everything exists in the mind, and everything exists present moment. That's why present, you know, they always talk about present moment, because you only create in the present moment. When you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the present moment. When you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about it in the present moment. And once I realized that, and once I was like, you know, I'm just going to ignore the fact that, you know, once an act, always an act. I'm going to ignore all the statistics on addiction and all that. You know, you have to go to 8 rehabs to the average. They're like giving you statistics. If you go through 8 rehabs, that's the statistic on how long it takes people to get clean. It's 8 rehabs. I ignored that. I ignored once an act, always an act. I ignored all that stuff because I was like, if I'm telling myself this, I'm setting myself up for failure. Like, and then I start researching the subconscious mind, the conscious mind. And the subconscious mind is just a bunch of programs. But you have all these programs in there. And a lot of them are negative. So if you have a bunch of negative programs telling you have a problem, and you can't stop, and you have to go to meetings every day the rest of your life, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you have this crazy addiction and disease that it's overcome you, and you can't do anything about it, and you're going to struggle your whole entire life. I refuse to believe that. I absolutely refuse to believe that. We need to stop telling people these things. And I get a lot of people have these problems, and it's true for a lot of people, but that's not how I did it. I did it differently. And they tell you that too. They're like, you know, you can't do it on your own. And I'm not saying I did it on my own. I had a lot of help. I did. But it was also the information that I had, that I applied, that helped me get sober and helped me get clean. And part of the thing is I don't really associate myself with anybody who has those problems anymore. I don't want to be around people who have those problems. I don't want to associate with people who have those problems. I don't want to talk about it. Like this video, I didn't want to do because, you know, it's very emotional. You know, I don't want to remember these things because I feel like if I remember them, I feel like I'm going to go down that rabbit hole again. And, you know, it doesn't do anything positive for me anymore. That's why I don't really want to talk about it. But the reason I'm talking about it is because I know it can help someone out. I know it can help people out. And the other reason I don't really talk about it is because the things I just said, a lot of the people in the addiction, you know, in addiction would disagree with what I have to say. And they'll call me out and be like, well, you know, you're different. You know, you never were an addict. Well, yeah, I was. I was an addict. So a lot of people will come out after me and say, you never were an addict. Or else you couldn't just stop on your own. But I refuse to believe that. I think that we need to start, you know, telling people and educating them on this, especially in the addiction community. Like, we need to be teaching this stuff in rehab. Like, we need to be teaching law of attraction rehab. We need to be teaching them that, you know, they're the creator of their own reality. Like, when you try to get to the bottom of something and you want to go deep within someone's mind, I get that, and I know a lot of it works. But here's the thing. It's like, okay, so you solved that problem. But like, a lot of, like with me, I didn't know where I was going in life. I had no needle, no direction, no nothing. That's what I needed. I didn't need to go deep into my childhood and figure out all my fucked up problems I had that caused me to have these problems when I had a great childhood. No one's childhood's perfect. I could think of all the things that could have given me the issues that drove me to addiction. I could tell you till I'm blue in the face about all that, but that's not true. And we need to tell these kids that have these problems that they can create their own reality. They don't need to believe this stuff. They don't need to believe that they can't stop, and that you need to go deep within and find all these things about, and that's what's going to help you stay clean. Like, what helped me again is, what helped me was focusing on what I wanted. Focusing on what I wanted. What do I want out of life? And the thing is, you have to want it bad enough to quit the drugs. Like, that's the thing. I wanted it bad enough to quit the drugs. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. We change when we hit our bottom. When you hit your rock bottom, that's when you usually change. We have to experience enough pain to change. Now, I know that's a belief system, and hopefully what I started doing now is because, we have different everybody has a different rock bottom. So what I started doing is I started hiring my rock bottom. So now, like, my rock bottom would be a lot higher than it ever was. So I always raise my rock bottom. So now my rock bottom is a lot raised. So if I hit my rock bottom, I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, I'm not doing what I need to be doing right now. I'm not, this is not good. This is not good. But that rock bottom is a lot higher than my rock bottom used to be. So that's what I start doing, is now I just raise the bar all the time. So if I hit the rock bottom, I go, shit, I'm like, yeah. Now, I'm not saying I don't have issues anymore. Like, I still do. We all struggle. It's just, it's just where you're putting that energy. So like the gym, like if I don't go to the gym, I usually don't have the best day, right? So the gym is what keeps my mind occupied and keeps me on the straight and narrow. And I always say to people, I'm like, if you want to stop doing drugs or whatever, and you don't want to go to the gym 4 days a week, then you don't want to quit bad enough. Because the gym does the same thing that drugs do. It gives you the same endorphins, floods your brain with the same stuff that when you use drugs does. And it feels awesome too. It's the best. Like, sometimes I get done the gym like, wow, I just feel like I did a bunch of stuff. So, hopefully this reaches the right people, and it makes sense. I do apologize if I said some things, because I'm going off the cuff here. I know a lot of people, and I know it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. So I do apologize if I was insensitive to certain things. I didn't mean it. It's just, I'm going off the cuff here. And, it's hard for me sometimes to be, to get in that emotional level, because, one thing I'm still working on is, touching your feelings and going within. That's one thing I've always struggled with. So I hope you guys appreciate this video. I want you guys to comment below what you think. If I helped you, I will see you guys in the next one.